Complex Fitness. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Okay, perfect. And we're on. So I'm very happy to introduce Coach Dan John to the podcast, to the chat. It's funny enough, actually. So when I was doing my course 4 or 5 years ago, the very first thing written on my copybook in that course is Dan John. And then under it, it says search on YouTube. This was one of the first things our instructor said in the course. And then he had written under that, and I've heard you speak about this as well since, it said, plan the hunt, and discuss the hunt.
Right. Yeah.
And that
the
was
old
the first
trio.
thing I wrote down, on the book, which I was actually only going through there a few months ago. I was throwing some stuff out and I saw that was the first page, which I thought was funny. So when I was thinking as well, I was thinking of writing down an intro or giving you some form of intro, but I honestly didn't know where to start on, Dan. There's such a vast history there.
Well, that's perfect. You don't need any more. Everyone will figure out if I'm an idiot in seconds. So don't you worry about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of milestones there. So I'm just going to run over basically a few little points from your world famous seminars, which I watch on YouTube. If anyone here is looking for some very good applicable coaching knowledge, just search Dan John seminar. There is, I don't know if there's hundreds of hours, but there seems to be hundreds of hours up there.
So my nephew, great young man named Michael, I hired him to help me organize him. We have 1,900 videos.
Yeah. I knew there was a lot there.
So that's a big number. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the next thing, I suppose, a big thing you're known for as well is the books. So I actually have acquired a good few of them myself, from Never Let Go, 40 Years with the Whistle, Easy Strength. And then the latest one I actually looked into, which I know is one of the older ones, is Mass Made Simple, just to kind of get an idea for it.
About 10 years old. Yeah.
So there's a good, the good thing I like about the books, and those especially, is there's a story with it. So it's not just throwing information at you. You kind of seem to go, you write in a way that it's, you write a bit of information, the experience with that information, and then you conclude, which is a nice way of reading. You kind of bring the person along on a story.
Yeah. Well, and I think humans love stories. I mean, they absolutely love stories. And the issue is sometimes it like, for example, it's Kevin, right? Kevin Farrell.
Farrell. Yeah.
Farrell. And Kevin, is that what happens is when people do research sometimes, or when they do studies or they test something, they don't include the story. For example, you're over there in Roscommon. Well, if you were to be the strength and conditioning coach, and all of a sudden, Roscommon knocks the Dubs off, for the All Ireland, because of something you did in the weight room. Well, everybody in the world wants to know what you did, man. And there's going to be a story behind that. You're not going to just say, "Oh, we're doing 3 sets of 3."
Yeah, of course.
What is different about your 3 sets of 3 and everybody else's? Well, we do 3 sets of 3, 3 days a week. Okay, good. Well, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. So people want to know what's the story. Yeah,
exactly. The story is important. It is important, definitely. And the last thing I want to touch on is your message is the main thing that I really find profound. And it's the real simple things. So you talk about longevity a lot, which is refreshing because a lot of coaches don't talk on that. And you define longevity very simply. It's quantity and quality of life within the years that you have left. And before you seem to touch on, you must copy this into your hashtags on Instagram, but you always finish with quite a simple little saying, and it's touches on wear a seatbelt, brush your teeth, and there's things like very simple messages like, before you worry about your health and fitness, maybe get your bloods done, maybe go to your doctor. So make sure everything else is in line.
Well, it's like when it comes to nutrition, Kevin, people ask me about some weird supplement. It's like, well, I just ate my post-workout, whatever the meal is. Okay. Well, it's, this is called brunch. And I had 2 or 3 different kinds of squashes, mushrooms. I had 2 eggs. I had some kimchi. And right now I'm making dinner. I've got black beans and fajita vegetables, just kind of warming up for dinner. That'll be a big side dish. But the point is, if you're not eating your vegetables, I don't want to hear about this magic thing you bought at the store.
Yeah.
If you're not drinking water, I don't want to hear you talk about hydration. Drink water and then get back to me,
Yeah.
and get a good night's sleep is the best recovery most of us can do,
Mm.
and life does get fairly simple. And all you need to do, in fact, just sit down with people who only have a year or so of life left and ask them what's important.
Yeah.
And you'll get all the answers. You'll get all the answers. And that's kind of how I try to do things in my life, constantly thinking I'm going to die any second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, there's, I mean, I'm closer to death than I am to my birth. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
there you
You're
go.
63 years young now, aren't you, at the moment?
Sneaking up on 64. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a grandson about to show up any minute. I'm just making myself some hot water with lemon. I got a grandson going to be here. I thought on Saturday, but here we go. And so it gives me a different vantage point. I think the fact, Kevin, that I had a good academic life and I had a good life outside of sports, with my studies and my travels and my social life and some other things. So I never let myself get too trapped into that. It's just what you do in the weight room, and I think that's an advantage.
Yeah. Do you think that's very important? Because I see a lot of people go down the rabbit hole of specializing in one thing and not just a skill, but nearly placing all their happiness into the outcome of a sport or an outcome of their performance. And then an hour on Sunday, you might lose a game. And for the next 6 days, you're unhappy. I've seen that quite a lot, that there's nothing else. They haven't given time to anything else really.
And I've seen fans do that too, who haven't even walked up a flight of stairs in a year, complaining about how unconditioned the team is. Yes.
Yeah. I've seen that quite a lot as well, especially I've heard it on the sideline. So a big thing, I suppose the topic I really wanted to touch on was training with age and considerations to make as you get older. So I knew you're the perfect person to talk about this, because you do have a wide array of experience, from Olympic lifting, discus throw, and powerlifting, different kind of programs, minimalistic programs. But on top of that, at 63 years of age, I believe you've had surgery on quite a few of your joints, maybe minus your ankles.
All but my ankles. That's right.
Yeah.
My ankles are in great shape, except for the right one from all those years of throwing. It's got some arthritis, but but in my defense, I mean, if you want an athletic career, so my first trophy is from 1967. That's my first trophy. And I just got, in just a few weeks here, I'll be lifting at our state weightlifting meet. And I'm going to try to break the national records in the snatch and clean and jerk and total. So when you have a career that's, well over 50, almost 55 years, you're going to get hurt. It's going to happen. And anybody who thinks you're not going to, when you dance on the razor's edge, things happen. I was born like many Irish with a condition called pistol grip hips. So the day I was born, I was going to get total hip replacements. So it didn't matter what I did. I could have just been a gardener and blown my hips out. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about longevity, and let's talk a little about a long athletic career, and let's just kind of dance with both of them.
Yeah.
So, as you know, I break things down by ages a lot, and they're not perfect. They come from my friend Nick Rains. But, up to 16, you should be playing as many sports as you possibly can and learn every game you can and be exposed to everything. Sadly, here in the States, people are really trying to just do one sport. And I think that's not a good plan. Now, if you're from Turles and all you do is hurling, I mean, I get that, because that's going to be the most important thing you ever did in your life. In some cases, if you win the All Ireland from Tipperary, they will, toast you, for the rest of your life.
Yeah, of course.
But from about 16 to about 35, I mean, this is the time where that is your athletic career. And this is when it's really important to make sure that the foundations and the fundamentals are taken care of. Having said that, this is also the time, if you're not an athlete, to not get fat, to not get injuries, to not, so you really should, if you can get through your 20s and your body fat levels are good, you've blessed yourself the rest of your life. One of the things I constantly say when I talk to people is, I don't care what the cliche is. You got to pay the piper, you got to pay the fiddler. If you make bad choices in your 20s and early 30s, you're going to be dealing with that in your 60s.
Mm.
And so that's the time you should probably be doing ballistic work, active sports, downhill skiing, mountain biking, have fun, get out there. But when you hit about 35 to about 55, 36 to 55, that's when things start to change. And that's when I really think you need to make sure you keep your strength levels up. It's an interesting thing about aging, Kevin. So the research has been telling us forever that your strength stays up and then it slowly declines. And the number one sign of aging is weakness. But if you come in like me, I'm going into my mid 60s with the ability to still push big lifts, as I going into this decline, and I'm watching it happen. I'm watching it happen literally on the platform, but at least I'm up here versus down here.
Yeah.
So it is inevitable. So you want to go into your 36 to 55, get as strong as you can be and keep yourself as lean as appropriate and keep your mobility. After 56, you really should become a bodybuilder because lean body mass is just drift,
Yeah, there's a big decline.
Yeah, so you're losing lean body mass, but you're also getting fatter. And they've done all those, where they show the muscles of a typical elderly person. And basically the thigh muscle might measure this around, but the bulk of it is fatty tissue.
Mm.
And so very simply, wear your seatbelt, don't smoke, drink water, eat vegetables, eat protein, sleep well. Can't say that one enough.
Mm.
I think it's really important to lift weights and go for walks, lift and walk. I mean, those are the two best things we know you can do for longevity. And then someone's going to raise their hand and they're asking about specific sets and reps and stuff. And it's like, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Anything is far better than nothing. And most people specialize in nothing.
Yeah. So as you get older, maybe it might be an idea to move toward machines as well for a lot of the movements. For, let's say, for someone who hasn't as big a training base or someone who's starting out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never said machines are bad. They're expensive. They're unwieldy. They're hard to move around. If you have a home set up with nothing but machines, you probably don't have a bedroom, because there's no room for anything else. Having said that, it is a nice way to get 8 to 12 reps without going through all the complicated notions of the barbell and the kettlebell and the dumbbell. So there is value to it. Yes.
Yeah. Another thing I've seen you touch on though is, let's say with the kettlebell, you speak a bit on, well, the first thing I've often heard you speak on is becoming friends with the ground.
Yes.
Half kneeling press, for example, and how that could aid someone, an older athlete or an older individual or an older person of the general public, because while you're learning to press overhead, get that shoulder stability, you're in a sort of a hip flex position. So you're getting the best of both worlds. So free weight still has a huge place, obviously, with the older generation.
Well, you'll notice a lot of my programs mix swings, kettlebell swings with push-ups or press-ups, as you call them there. And the reason is you're getting up and down off the ground. I think you really need to get up and down off the ground. I think it's at my age, and I've said this a million times, the most dangerous thing in my house is the floor. And I have slipped and I've fallen and I've done some stuff, and knowing how to fall, spending time in my training on the floor has gotten me used to it. I don't fear dropping to the floor. Now, if I was to go out and compete in a sport that involved a lot of getting up and getting down, my conditioning would suffer until I got used to getting up and getting down. I'm a huge believer in whatever you want to call them, get back ups. We call them grass drills in the United States.
I know the ones.
Yeah, but there's a great value, great tool, getting up and down off the ground. We call it the sixth move. So climbing, crawling, getting up and down off the ground. I don't want to hear about burpees and lunges. Tell me how often your clients get up and down off the ground, then we'll talk.
Perfect.
By the way, and if you're doing machines, do a set of presses in a machine, lay down on the ground, get back up, do another set, lay down on the ground, get back up. You could do something that simple and you will, your heart rate will go through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I've heard people speak about is, I suppose you don't want an older athlete or an older generalist in the gym all day. So using your rest periods wise is a good idea.
So Kevin, what I tell people, and agree or disagree, but
Yeah.
mobility work should always be done between, that's your rest period. So we use Tim Anderson's original strength. We use a lot of different half kneelings. Obviously we use bands. I mean, I use any tool in the world. I love them because so you do a set of 8 instead of just standing around, changing the music or the TV station. Do your mobility work, and that'll half your workout time. Most people train way too long. Right now, I'm getting ready for this weightlifting meet, and my first thing of mobility takes 1 minute, a 30-second hang and a 30-second sit in the goblet squat. Then I do 3 sets of 5 in the snatch complex. That takes minutes. And then today I did 5 sets of 2 in the snatch, 3 singles in the clean and jerk. But then I did a heavy hands, ankle weight and heavy hand walk for 2.4 miles, which took about 40 minutes. So I got my Olympic lifts in, I got my mobility work in, and I got my loaded walk in the time that most people spend on the treadmill warming up.
Yeah, true. To jump out of the topic for a second, go back to the meet you're going to be competing in. What is the goal? You're saying you're looking to break a record. What is the current record?
So the snatch is 91K and the clean and jerk is 112. Don't forget, at my age, the numbers aren't very good. So but I'd like to go 92 and 113.
Perfect. Yeah. So
we'll just see. I mean, and the truth is, the 92 is probably, we'll see. We'll see.
Good.
Give me the weeks to get, let me practice. My numbers, I do easy strength. So I just practice the lifts 5 days a week and slowly let the load go up. I don't freak out. I don't judge anything. I let the load progress.
Perfect. So another point you had touched on there about a few minutes ago was the importance of being, I suppose, a generalist in your youth and
yes,
in your early youth. So I was reading, did you ever hear of Ross Edgley, the guy who swam around Great Britain? Did you see that guy?
No, but I like it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So he had a book out. It was, I think he called it the world's fittest book, but one of the quotes in it always stuck to me, and it's something I've repeated. And it's, I think it said, to specialize robs you from being a human being. He's big on his GPP and his general physical preparedness and being an all-rounder and not shying away from, not specializing, basically. Do you think?
And that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Unless you want elite performance.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Like, to be elite, some of the
Kevin, you need
out the window.
You need that balance. And so when I work with people who are specialized, elite throwers, Highland gamers, American football doesn't look to you guys like they specialize, but it's highly specialized. And then what we do is we also have that conversation of, well, right now we are specializing, and then after your career is done, then we'll undo the damage from hyper specialization.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've discovered with the nervous system, this is just a small thing. So if you're a right-handed discus thrower, we do a lot of drills with the left side, and really to teach the right side to throw farther, because when you train the nervous system, you train the whole nervous system. And what we've discovered is some of these silly little ideas that we come up, they would just used to be for fun, but now we're starting to think they actually help you be more elite. So some of the things I'd have you do long-term in your career, I'm having you do earlier and earlier, just to help your nervous system adapt at an even higher level.
Of course. Another thing as well is your aerobic protocols for all ages, never mind just older, tend to be or include a lot of carrying or carried variations.
Yes.
What would be your main reason for that? Is it just building that sort of strength while getting the heart rate up?
I don't know. Every so often someone will do research on loaded carries and they won't really provide any more information. Then I got 99 aught 1, 2, 3, and 4 when we were just experimenting with it, and loaded carries build work capacity, and I'm not sure how. I don't care because it works.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. When you work with an athlete, you don't have very long to, they have a very short shelf life.
Mm.
So if I wait for the research to prove that loaded carries is going to help you, I might have destroyed your career. I waited too long to help you out. So I wouldn't say aerobic. Well, I mean, your heart rate goes up and you sweat a lot. But for us, the word I would use is work capacity. And so I explain work capacity like this. Here we have a thing in the United States called Thanksgiving, and it's a lot of food. It's a great event. It's my favorite holiday of the year. And so you come home from the grocery store with 18 different bags, okay? And the bags weigh between, let's say the bags all weigh 10 kilos, okay? We'll just say that. And to get into my kitchen, you have to go up 10 steps. So for me, I'm going to load up all 18 bags and walk up that flight of stairs once.
Yeah.
So it's a 180 kilo carry, one damn flight of stairs, and I'm finished. Another person listening is thinking, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. I do 18 round trips with 10 kilos. Someone sitting next to someone say, no, I do 2 or 3 or 4. See how that feels. Then try 5. That's too heavy. Go back to 2. That's too light. I don't care. To me, then work capacity is that matrix, that whole spreadsheet of options you have to get those bags into the house. If I'm a great puncher in a fight and I'm famous for literally a sledgehammer punch, and that's the only tool I get, I'm going to come out of my corner, pin you, and hit you as hard as I can one time. If it knocks you out, I'm the world champion. If it doesn't, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it's the ability to do more.
Yeah. So, but if I have a big punch and I can last 15 rounds and still have a big punch, there's a real good chance I'm going to end up being the world champion anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, if I punch you 100 times like this on the chest, and it's going to do no damage. If I punch you one time with a sledgehammer, it's going to do a lot of damage. To win a fight, you need to find that right work capacity to deal with both.
Mm.
And this is how, when I work with UFC fighters, this is what I try to get them to learn, is that you have certain qualities, Kevin has certain qualities that we need to make sure stick around through the whole fight. You're good at this. Hey, you're not good at this. If you're a crappy puncher, don't get into a boxing match in a fight. Grab the legs, get on the ground. If you're a great puncher, when he goes to shoot, back off and punch him in the head. That's what work capacity is.
Yeah.
For a discus thrower, the work capacity you need is to take a lot of throws. But at a track meet, you only need one.
How
So
many attempts do you get at a track meet? Is it 2 or 3?
3 to 6.
3 to 6.
So traditionally, you get 3 in the trials and 3 in the finals.
Perfect.
But you got to make the finals, get those last 3. But it doesn't matter if you throw the world record on your first throw. You just pack your bags and you win. You're done. No one's going to beat you. So that's what work capacity is. One of the things about aging is that people's work capacity goes down because they don't practice it. So the loaded carries are a good way for an older adult to just practice work capacity. And last week, Kevin, my daughter, how old are you, Kevin?
25.
Oh, you're just a baby. Okay.
Yeah.
So she's 30 and she had all these stumps in her backyard and she asked me to help move them. So for 3 hours, I picked up stumps and threw them into this big waste bin, this massive, container, and I sat down at the end of it and it was like, oh my God, I'm tired. Because for all the training I do, I don't pick up stumps for 3 hours and throw them into a bin.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to pick up stumps and throw them into a bin 5 days a week for a couple of months, I'd be in an interesting kind of condition. Interesting, as I say, I might not look as good on the beach, but I can move stumps all day long.
Yeah.
So this is when this becomes a little bit not complicated it just becomes more difficult. And that's when sometimes you have to sit back and make sure you're fully understanding what the needs of the sport or the needs of your client are. Because I could be in the best stump moving shape in my life and look terrible in a swimsuit. Or I could be in the best stump and maybe I'm a great Highland gamer doing this. You see my point?
Yeah.
So work capacity is something we all need. The word I use is snapacity. So that's hinge is snap, and capacity, snapacity. I want my athletes to hinge hard longer than anybody else can. So that means throw the discus or tackle or hit people hard many, many, many times.
Yeah.
I think that's more valuable than getting them one big hit or having the conditioning of a marathoner or or whatever.
Yeah.
Marathoners and triathletes have wonderful conditioning, but they can't always move stumps for 3 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. So it is about finding that balance with whoever you're working with.
Exactly. Yeah.
Important. So moving on to, let's say, a hip exercises for aging people or someone who hasn't trained. You've often spoken of the two things, one we touched on, that make a big difference to people you've worked with, are two things people don't really do, and that's carry and hinge. So
carry and squat. Now, hang on.
Carry and squat.
So basically, most people have upper body work locked down.
Yeah.
It's squat, hinge, and carry. They don't do it all.
Yeah.
So squat is maximal hip bend, maximal knee bend. And I think the goblet squat is all most people need. And with the squat, you just want to practice squatting. I squat every single day. I squat and hang every single day because I think those two are just hang from a bar. And then I sit at the bottom because what I'm trying to do is, if I do that 366 days a year, that mobility, flexibility work is going to trend into the right direction. Just sitting in the bottom position of a goblet squat will probably do more for most of your older listeners than all kinds of like leg extensions or leg curls. The hinge is very close to the squat, except instead of maximum knee bend, it's whatever's appropriate. And I use the word minimal. And the hinge is the most powerful thing a human can do. That's the standing long jump. It's very powerful. It's how you tackle somebody, how you knock somebody down. And then, of course, loaded carries. When you combine good hinge work with good loaded carries, you tend to have a good sports program. So if you can get your athletes to swing, do the Olympic lifts, rack deadlifts, that would be great. That'd be a great program. And then any kind of loaded carries, sleds, prowlers, heavy bag carries, farmer walks. Just picking those two options and mixing and matching it, kind of fun. You'd have an outstanding strength program. And in the warm-ups, do your goblet squat, and you'd be fine. Fine. I mean, you'd be fine. And I didn't say perfect, but you'd be fine.
Yeah. That's what most people are looking for. They're not looking for that perfect. They're looking to be able to touch their toes without pain, or pick things off the floor, or not have to rely on someone to grab something off the shelf. A lot of the time, that's what a high percent of the population are looking for.
Yeah.
And that's enough. So I suppose the minimal, simple stuff that you'd said, the everyday man stuff, is really all you need in these kind of programs.
Well, and the longer I play around with this stuff, the more and more convinced of it I become.
Do you ever find yourself, maybe over the years, obviously there's a lot of coaching in there, but I assume you've tried a ton of different programs. Do you ever find yourself towards the end of one thinking, God, you know what, I'm just going to go back to this simple thing that I did before?
Probably only about 50 weeks a year I do that.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's a rare time where I'm not like, oh, we just did so much. I was with one of my former students last night. We were talking about, it's interesting. He's in his mid 40s now. And we were talking about, we were at a very academic school, so I could only have the athletes for an hour. And because I had only for an hour, I had to think through everything. So our hours they weren't like highly disciplined, but I had to teach myself and my athletes how to get a lot done in that hour. So that's where we came up with the transformation program, the one lift a day, using walls. So the implements never went very far, using drills. This is where farmer walk showed up. This is where hill sprint showed up. And it's funny because I'll talk to people about hill sprints and I'll say, well, yeah, we did 2. And then why'd you do more? Well, because if we did more, and we did that a few times, it took too much time. And so we got our hill sprints in, but we didn't get any of our discus throwing or shot putting or javelin throwing.
Mm.
So yeah, we got everybody tired, but no one got better.
Yeah.
Whereas if we do 2 hills or 1 hill, everyone went real hard in that single burst, walked over, did some discus drills, walked over, did some farmer walks. Then we did the circuit, and then people are going. And yeah, so maybe I need to do hills instead of 4 times a month. Maybe we had to do it 12 times a month. But at the end of every month, our hill volume was just the same as your program.
Yeah.
But you guys were out there for 3 hours and we were out there for an hour.
Yeah.
So in my thinking, if I can beat you on 1 hour versus what you're doing on 3, not only am I defeating you on the field of play, I'm also out thinking and out coaching you.
Yeah, of course. Because you're going to have to take into consideration, if they're doing more than 2 or 3 hill sprints, they're going to need time to recover realistically as well within that hour.
And then they just, and we all know it. The athletes fake it. And if it's too much, athletes, I call it being a brother-in-law. That's when, I don't know if you've ever been in a contact sport where 2 guys will tackle or hit each other and one guy flops over.
Yeah.
And you walk over and you're like, what, you guys related? You guys family or something? Because he's obviously faking it,
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, I'd say so. You're working with college or you're working with younger people and you have that hour slot, and because they're younger, you can realistically you can throw whichever at them. They're going to pick it up fast. But let's say, or they're going to pick it up faster than an older adult anyway, I would assume. But let's say
that's a big assumption. I don't know
if
it's
true. Yeah.
Okay.
Because my experience is anyway so far is if an 18 or 20-year-old walks into the gym for a session, in a small group training session, and I have 2 new people in a group of 5, the 18 to 24-year-old, and there's a 55 to 65-year-old in there, the 18 to 24-year-old, I nearly have to show them once and they pick up that movement quite quick. Now, this is granted, they're playing sports and they are comfortable moving. They know how to jump. They know how to land. But the other guy, I'm going to have to spend the guts of the 45 minutes with them, just breaking it down into simpler terms.
But that could just be when you're older, there's that little bit of fear of movement. Maybe they're stiff. I have found in my career, I've got 2 things. First off, I have some level of wisdom, and so I've been able to apply reasonable thinking to my athletic career. And then the other thing is I have a lot of money, so I can invest pretty heavily into my physical and recovery stuff. Right here. Sorry, the room is a little bit messy because I'm moving things around, but can you see that right there?
Yes.
So that bed over there, that's an electronic massage bed called a Megan. And then right there is, I got a sauna right there.
Ooh,
so this is my office. So very often I will, it's kind of a fun thing to do. Actually, I recommend it if you have one. So I'll set the timer on the sauna, work, and when the thing goes off, I'll hop in the sauna. So it makes me, but not a lot of your 18-year-olds are going to put a sauna into their house. Not a lot of your 18-year-olds are going to invest in the kind of medical care I invest in. So yes, you're right. But just kind of, and here's the other thing. One other thing, financially, Kevin, you want a gym of plus 50-year-olds in there. They won't argue as much. They'll spend money and they'll clean up and they'll have ownership in the facility. 18-year-olds will take their shirts off, put their zitty backs on the benches and not wipe up after. So
fair enough. The recovery stuff, that's interesting that you've made those investments, and it's definitely a good thing. I see a lot of people aren't quick to jump on those kind of investments. But one thing again there that you said was the fear of movement in older clients. So let's say a 55, for example, year old comes into you and they have no real experience moving. They're almost afraid to pick a 6 kg kettlebell up off the ground. What's your protocol for breaking them in, for lack of a better term?
Well, maybe I'll do a kettlebell cert there for you somewhere in the West. but I have a whole bunch. And now I don't like calling them regressions. I like to call them drills.
Mm.
Regressions, and I don't mean at all, and I don't think it does, but some people hear the word regression
Yeah.
and think lesser. So I use the word drill.
Yeah.
So every single exercise I teach has a bunch of drills. Now, here's the interesting thing, Kevin, is that if I'm training you and I see you're moving crappy at age 25, you might be doing the drill next to a 73-year-old grandmother. And that's actually very valuable for both of you,
Mm.
because so that's what I use drills. And I just think, I don't know if you've been to danjohnuniversity.com, but
Yeah.
in there is, I mean, you can always move up or down in complexity any lift, because in fact, one of my clients, Anne, she's just a lovely young woman, born deaf and just phenomenal, but she always takes every exercise up to the most difficult variation.
Mm.
And what she's found is something as simple that the same program I would give her grandmother, I can give her, but instead of doing goblet squats, she does leaping goblet squats, which are a fascinating exercise, especially when you watch a hot girl do it. That's funny. But she's doing the same squat movement that great grandma is doing here on the ground, and great grandma is doing 6-point rocks for her squat movement, and Anne is doing leaping goblet squats. So that's why I think you really need a pocket of drills. I have this whole thing called the movement matrix, where I take push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded, carry, and then I take them across into so the plank world, push up position plank. Uh, I usually use now TRXTs, but I used to use the glute bridge, which is the frozen hip thrust,
Yeah.
the goblet squat, which is a moving plank, and the farmer walk, which is a moving plank. And then it goes into the barbell world, and then to the anti-rotation world, and then to ballistics. And the idea is, so there's only 37 exercises on the movement matrix, but in my head and in my coaching, we might have, oh gosh, I bet you in the hinge, man, I don't even, if I said 12, 15 regressions, you can see them on my YouTube channel.
Mm.
I mean, they're all over there. One of them is I get you on your knees and you just do hinges from your knees with no load at all to teach the movement. Because by putting you on your knees, I cut the ankles out. So you don't even have to think about that anymore.
Yeah.
So when I say push your butt back, you don't even have to think about your ankles anymore. That's a regression, man. And here's the funny thing: there's nothing wrong with that regression. It's a good exercise. In fact, we do that on our Thursday tonic day. These hinges on the knees, and I swear to God, my hamstrings hurt more doing that crap than the Olympic lifts, because it's so much more isolated. There's no place to sneak around. Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. So, one of the jobs you need to do as a coach is to build up a system, and this is what I work on constantly, so that at any spot when a problem comes up, you can say, okay, I mean, on the fly in 10 seconds, if you're my assistant, Edna's having problems, I'll just say hinge from the knees, and you'll walk over and you'll change exercises. And we might have 50 people training at once, and we made that one correction to her and we move on. That's why it's so important to have a system, to have a language that you use. Anytime I put my hands, knees, and feet on the ground, that's 6-point. That's what it is. Prone is laying face down. Generally, we have our elbows on the ground and prone. That's our language for prone. When I say hinge, I only mean one thing. Okay. We have all these regressions and corrections in the loaded carry family, and you need to have that language so you can talk. When I teach the discus, there's only 4 words I teach you: stretch, 1, 2, 3. That's the whole throw. I break 3 into A, B, and C. The 3 is the throwing stance, and A is where the implement is at the time. And I can talk to you on the phone from Roscommon, and you can say, I keep hitting throwing the discus out of the right sector. And I will say, pick up your right foot earlier in one. And you'll go, I knew it would be that simple.
Yeah,
If you're struggling at a meet, I can say short two, and I just explain to you what your problem is.
yeah. So you have a
And
system for everything, including the
system for everything. And on the back of my computer, I have my daily pirate map. This is this is actually a part of the book I'm writing, and it's hard to see it, but it's just some notes I typed up, and then notes underneath the notes of how I'm going to try to fix it, which everything has to be a system. When I go to bed, I have a system for getting ready for the next day. I make my coffee. I set my coffee for the next day. I make my to-do list, and I take what I call my meta vitamins, which I don't know. This isn't medical advice, but I take orange flavored sugar-free Metamucil every night. And then I take this pill called metformin. I got a liver parasite when I was in the Middle East a long time ago, and it really beat me up. Metformin, I get a 90-day supply of it for $1. So it's about a penny maybe a day. And it's good for the liver, and it's very inexpensive. And then I take melatonin. I call those my meta supplements. So melatonin helps me fall asleep, get a better night's sleep, and it does magical things to the cells. I don't know what it is, but the most expensive thing I supplement is Metamucil. Let me just check to see why my dog is losing his mind.
That's
okay. Hold on. Sure. Sorry, Kevin. Think of another question. It's the mailman.
Of course.
Okay. I'm back with you. Sorry.
That's all good. We have the same problem here when the mailman comes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you can hear me okay?
Yeah, all perfect.
Good. I'm doing a workshop this Saturday with the Rocco, and it's called The System, and it's like 30 pounds. And you can look, if you go to my Instagram, I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
But the thing, and you really, I'll finish this entire talk, and there's still so much more in the system than what I share. Yes. Because there's just, once you start on a system, you begin to find new places you failed on. You didn't make clear enough, and then you add that to the system, and you add that. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question with all that, but
no, you definitely expanded on it. Definitely.
Yeah.
So for example, let's say I have an older adult come in, or anyone who comes in, you kind of would you break your program into movement patterns and then fit what fits with them into that? So today, dominant. Yeah.
You're going to email me after this, and I'll send you my movement matrix, and then just post that in the show notes. Here's what you're going to show up. If you have a bad shoulder, like many American males have, we're still going to have you push and pull, but we're going to find some kind of exercise that doesn't aggravate it and maybe supports it. Everybody who comes to trains with me, push, pull, hinge, squat, loaded carry. You will do those 5 exercises. And my job is to find the ones that work. Very often with people who are new, we just work on the plank family, the push-up position plank, the glute bridge. Here's an interesting one. A suitcase carry is a one-handed.
Yeah.
You hold weight in one hand. Marching in place, suitcase carries. Game changer, because I get a chance to look at it's a balance issue. You have to be able to bring your knees high because you're marching in place. And every time you step, your whole, whatever you want to call the system between your knees and your neck, call it your core, call it your column, whatever you want to call it, has to hyperactivate to deal with just marching in place. So these are all pretty simple things, but for most adults who work with me, if I have them, and here's your program. Here you go. The first thing we would do is test you on the push-up position plank. You would stand up. I would take you over to suspension trainers. We'd do some tees. How does that feel? Okay. Then I'd have them maybe superset the glute bridge and tees, and then maybe here's your finisher: goblet squat, suitcase carry, goblet squat, switch hands, suitcase carry, goblet squat, and just go back and forth with a light goblet squat. We call that the sparrow hawk, or the spar hawk. And so you're goblet squatting followed by the suitcase carry, and it doesn't matter. You wouldn't have to do very much of it. But the nice thing is, I would say, okay, that's it. And they'd look, well, that wasn't very much. Well, I know. Come back tomorrow, the next day, and we'll add some things to it. And the truth is, very often they go, I slept so good last night because the goblet squat and the glute bridge and the tees, the suspension trainer tees, open their shoulders and hips up so that they slept really well that night. And that's kind of how you do things. And that's that simple.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is, I suppose it would be your job and any coach's job to empower whoever they are training, that they're able to train pain-free. And it's important to find positions that are pain-free, because too often we avoid things because we're afraid of the pain or because it's caused pain before.
Yeah.
But it's important to empower to them that they're able to move pain-free. We just got to find out how.
So Kevin, like with myself with this Olympic lifting meet, I've injured myself on the platform a lot of times. I probably have more injuries from Olympic lifting than all my other sports combined, including American football. And so, and I'm going in worried about getting hurt again. So how do I deal with it? Well, I deal with it the same way I coach myself the same way I would coach this little Danny John 64-year-old here. So we're going to go real light. We're going to work on tempo. We're going to work on good positions. We're going to keep practicing the movements until one day, May 15th, I'll be on the platform and we'll go heavy.
Yeah. Self-efficacy is definitely something that is used in the space.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think I don't want to hold you too much longer. I know you've given up an hour for me already.
That's all good. I'd like to, one thing, and let me just go over a couple real quick points if you don't mind. If you don't mind.
Please.
So, and I think these are true for everybody. These are I call it coaching 101. Here in the United States, introductory college classes are called 101. So number one is called Embrace the Obvious. And I joke about this, but swimmers swim, jumpers jump, throwers throw, bikers bike, lifters lift. And when you tell me you want to do this goal or whatever, the first thing I do is embrace the obvious,
Yeah.
And if I don't understand your sport, I'll talk to somebody who does, and they'll say, oh, here are the three things you need to know. In fact, if you read 40 years, that's how I became a volleyball coach. I only knew three things. And I never got better as the season went on because I was full-time. I had two full-time jobs coaching a volleyball team, a sport I didn't know. Hell, I didn't understand 90% of what was going on, but I understood the three things. I understood the three things. So I just embraced the obvious. These are the three things that make us win. And by God, my little ragtime team with their horrible coach, we won. We won a lot. Towards the middle part of the season, we were the best. Well, in our division, we were by far the best. And we were terrible, except the coach embraced the obvious. Yeah. We didn't work. All these other teams are working on all this other nonsense. I worked on what. And number two is invest wisely in asymmetrical risks. So every sport has things that come up. I spend quality time on things that come up. In American football, there are some situations that might only come up once in your entire career, but we're going to practice that. There are situations like overtime. When the World Cup comes around, I'm always amazed. It always seems to me that they're not prepared to do the shootout at the end of the World Cup soccer football. Dude, I would be on day one. I would say, "Okay, Kevin, you're gonna be my first shooter," and then one of my coaches would say, "And the goalie likes to go left 92% of the time." So we would be practicing that. We might not ever get into a shootout, but we're going to practice that because that dead ball situations. Do you play Gaelic football?
Yeah.
What's a situation in Gaelic football that doesn't happen very often?
A situation that doesn't happen very often would be added time, injury time. So basically, after 60 minutes in a championship match, we just played two 30-minute halves. We would come out and go into two 10-minute halves. That is something that would rarely happen because the scoring options are so vast between points and goals. It's very hard to be level by the time it comes to the end of a game.
Well,
So
I
that's
would,
something.
I wouldn't necessarily practice that extra. I mean,
Yeah.
I would, at some level, we would prepare ourselves for
Do
it.
you know what's a more applicable one, actually? Something that doesn't
Okay.
happen too much. So red cards aren't, they are, well, in some counties, they're a bit more common than others, but it's very common for a team to get a red card. So red card means you had
Yeah.
15 men, you get a man sent off, you're down to 14.
Yeah.
So it's 14 against 15. You should be at a disadvantage, but so many times the team of 15 doesn't actually know how to deal with their extra man, that the team of 14 wins or pulls away because they don't know what to do with that extra man. Whereas I've played under a lot of managers and they will say, okay, other team gets a man sent off. Kevin, you're moving to the wing. You're going to be the free man. So everyone knows that. Everyone's clear. Boom, that's what we're doing. Whereas a lot of teams
Exactly.
don't have that. Yeah.
Your coach and your manager invested wisely in asymmetrical risks.
Mm.
And what you do is you should have an assistant coach. And this would not be something you do before the season. This is months before the season. And you write down every situation you can think of. What I would do is type them up, laminate them so they're plastic. You can bring them out. And at every practice, we would practice 3, maybe 4 not strange. It could be something that happens 12 times in a game, but it doesn't happen every play. Do you guys have penalty shots?
We have penalties. Yeah.
Well, penalty shots. We're going to practice multiple penalty shots. We're going to practice. And then number 3 is the hardest one for young coaches to understand. Respect the process.
Mm.
You can't control the outcome. So no offense to Roscommon, you guys hire me. I'm a good strength coach. And I'll make it a better example. Mayo hires me, and I'm a good strength coach. And we recruit really, really well. But because we cut off a funeral service, we're still cursed.
Yeah.
But as good as we could
Slagging
be,
for that now.
so as good as we could be out in Roscommon or Mayo in Gaelic football, there's a good chance Dublin's going to beat us because they have rugby and they have Gaelic football and they have numbers and they've got obviously a good pool of talent and they obviously have good administration and good coaching.
Mm.
But boy, we can make it tough on them if we respect the process. We still might lose, but we're going to be in a situation, and we can even say the kind of thing maybe next year because we've made such global improvements.
Yeah.
So when I work with people, and for example, my own odyssey of, being in my 60s, Olympic lifting, I can't predict what I'm going to do on the platform or what others are going to do at the worlds or the nationals. I can't predict it, but I can show up with my technique honed in. I can show up with all my equipment because I have a checklist that has all my equipment. I can register early and take care of all the administrative work months ahead of time. I can get a hotel months ahead of time, a nice hotel, not some crappy sleaze bag. I can take care of all those little items that will help me perform at my best.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that one. And it reminds me of a teammate of mine who has played for Roscommon a good few years. And we were talking before a game, we had a big team talk, and he said he had brought that point up, actually, the process, not the outcome. He said the last big game he was in, 10 minutes to go, 2 points down. He said all he could do was focus on the scoreboard. He couldn't actually focus on his own game. And he said he completely lost it then because he wasn't concentrating on his own process. He wasn't concentrating on himself, but the outcome and what was going to happen in 10 minutes time. And the system the team had in place, even though this is a team that in the last 10 minutes has been down quite a lot and always stuck to the game plan and come back, it totally went out the window because his mind changed to the outcome. So it is very applicable, definitely, in a lot of walks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, you know, I always joke, I have all these national championships and stuff. And every time I win a national championships, almost universally, someone will say, well, you know, if Kevin would have been there, he would have beat you. And I'm always like, well, that's fine. If he would have showed up, I would have lost. But he didn't.
Yeah.
All I can do is do what I do. I can't control whether he's smart enough to figure out what day the event is, you know?
Yeah.
So, and here's another, I mean, there's a couple of other things you can do. For example, how you play when you're up by a lot. What would be a lot in a Gaelic football game? If I said 10 points, would that be a that's a big lead.
Yeah.
Second half, 10-point lead.
Mm.
Well, how should you play then? Well, I think a good manager has already had that conversation.
Yes.
When we're 10 ahead, we're going to stop, you know, don't let them back in. No stupid turnovers. Don't, you know, take some chances, certainly as appropriate, but just play the game. If you're down by 10 points, you know, you got to force the issue. So how do we force it? Well, and whatever the answer is, we'll practice that. We'll practice that at least once a week. Practice playing behind, practice playing ahead, practice playing down, you know, red card situation, either way. Kevin, I enjoyed talking to you. I don't know when I'll be to Galway next.
That's perfect. Whenever you are, I'm sure I'll hear.
Yeah, I have lots and lots of good friends in Ireland, and I love coming out. But you live in the Roscommon then, huh?
Yeah, I'm only an hour away from Galway, though. I went to university in Galway, so I'm well.
Which one?
NUIG. No, NUIG. It was CCG, yeah. So it's the big, beautiful building in the middle of just outside.
Exactly. Yeah, I know it very well.
Yeah.
Very well. Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. Yeah, and I hang out near Salt Hill.
Oh yes.
In Salt Hill, near the diving tower, and I swim every day when I'm there. And
do you come in the summer?
No, October usually.
October, it's cold.
In the summer you got to deal with the races, and you got to deal with all the Europeans and stuff. It's the nice thing is, if you show up with an American accent in October, they're nice to you. If you show up with an American accent in August, they're not so nice to you.
Fair enough.
They get a little tired of the Americans, but it's a delightful place. And I'm just I'd like to do this again with you. I'm happy to talk to you. Okay.
That's perfect. Well, thanks a million for having me on. I know you're busy, and I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to publish this and let the people of Roscommon hear you.
Make sure you send me the email, and we'll make you famous. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan.
Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Complex fitness. Ba da 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 da.